Morning, everyone. Nice to see you here today. Welcome to the first of the Africa E-Mobility Week webinars. Start off with give it a minute for everyone to finally be admitted, and then we can get started. So please feel free to rename yourselves. There's an option for that, so that everyone knows which organization you're from and your full name. Right. It's 11:01. Welcome all to the Africa E-Mobility Week. We're excited to see this inaugural event come together, and we are really looking forward to promoting e-mobility on the continent. This event would not be possible were it not for the participation of you as the audience, as well as our very capable panelists and moderators that will be featured in a series of roundtables over the next few weeks. We will have an e-mobility exposition on the 29th of October, and you're all invited to come and see, learn, interact with e-mobility products and their product providers. So this session on business readiness for e-mobility startups in Africa will be the first of a series of conversations that we'll be having to debunk e-mobility on the continent. We thank our partners who have greatly supported us in making this event possible, and that's EV Charger, Untapped, the Waterfront Mall, and United Nations Environment Programme. Their support goes a long way in enabling us to have and continue having these conversations. I'll now hand it over to the moderator of the day, Mr. Tukam, and you may carry it away.
All right, thank you so much, Warren, and thanks for all those who have made time to join us. I think we have quite an impressive set of panelists today. I think coming at it from quite, I think, varied but very complementary angles. And I think before sort of I'll pass on to them, I'll tell you a bit about myself, but also give you a bit of a importance of sort of e-mobility. Right, and so from a personal perspective, I'm Tukam Gufanke. I'm with a firm called Persistent. We're an early stage investor in the sector with offices out of Nairobi primarily, but we do have offices, people based in Zurich and New York and Nigeria as well. From a big picture perspective, right, I think mobility, at least most of you are on here because it's sort of an interesting and attractive sector, right? And attractive in the sense, at least, three perspectives, right? There's the people, the planet, and of course, there's the profit side, right? People side being that, when you look across sub-Saharan Africa and even globally, but sub-Saharan Africa especially, right? A lot of mobility has to do with jobs, right? With actually earning an income, right? You think about two-wheelers, just across East Africa, you're looking at somewhere at least 1.5 million of those motorcycles on the road being used primarily for income earning purposes. You look at whether it's buses perspective, right, across sub-Saharan Africa, you're looking at 1 million buses or so, right, that transports upwards of 40% of the population, right, on a daily basis. So, mobility is important, right? There's that people side, and I think if you think about e-mobility, right, the value here being being able to offer something that is better from a fuel perspective, better both financially for those involved, but better also from an environmental perspective. And also, again, just quickly, why that sort of is an important sector and why these folks have, given time to be here. With that said, then I think you're going to hear from each one of our panelists, right? So maybe before we could just do a quick intro of the panelists. And then, you can then start going into sort of the brief presentation that you have to share. And then after that, we're going to go, into sort of a panel discussion, touching on some of the things they would have talked about, but also some other questions we've prepared. And I think at that point as well, Warren, correct me if I'm wrong, there are also going to be some questions that would have coming from the audience to the panelists. So with that, Arun, do you mind maybe quickly introducing yourself, then Mark and Yvonne?
Sure to come. Thanks. I'm Arun Gopalan and I work for Energy for Impact. I'm joining this panel today in the capacity of the program manager for PRIO, and you will know more about PRIO during my presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Hankins. I'm representing Get Invest, and Get Invest is a advisory group that connects entrepreneurs with sources of finance. I'm based in Nairobi. I've been working in the renewable energy and off-grid energy access sector for more than 30 years, and I've worked in 20 countries in Africa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ivana Pafo. I'm an investment officer with Untapped Global. And at Untapped Global, we are an asset financing company. So where we provide we provide capital to finance assets for businesses that we partner with using a model that we call smart asset financing. I'm based out in Nairobi and we operate across Africa. We're a global team, but we invest across Africa and have partnered with companies in over 10 countries on the continent, but then also by extension with one country in Latin America. We'll dive into that a little bit more and then also kind of give some insights on how we see mobility and its expansion across the continent and the benefits that we see that it's going to bring. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great, very much. Thank you so much, Yvonne. So maybe we'll start then just, so prepared remarks of Arun. And, Arun, maybe tell us a bit about sort of preparation, so the presentation you had, but just a big picture here for everybody else, right? So Arun is going to come at this a bit from a, provider, right? Financier perspective, right? But a lot on the grant side, which is what a lot of PRIO does. He's going to get into that. Then maybe we can go to Yvonne, who will talk to us, right, from a financial service provider sense, but more sort of the debt side, which is the bulk of what Untap does. Then I think, Mark, you can then come in now from a advisory perspective. So Arun, over to you, then Yvonne, and then Mark.
Tukam, thanks again for laying out the structure. I'm going to share my screen very briefly. Okay, before we start, hi everyone, hello to all the participants. On behalf of PRIO and the team, I thank EMDA in giving us the opportunity to be part of this discussion. I think what has been allocated to me is about 5 minutes, so I'm going to be running briefly through the set of slides that I have. And Tukam, please feel free to come back on any of this if we still have time later on. Just to introduce PRIO, Powering Renewable Energy Opportunities, our PRIO aims to demonstrate the viability of productive use of energy business models in sub-Saharan Africa. And our strong belief is that there is significant amount of technology and innovation and R&D type of grant on one side. And then the next step is that there is a lot of grant capital that is particularly tied to achieving volumes and sales, which is popularly called as result-based financing. And then there's a strong vacuum in between where the companies need to take the technology that they have built in the lab to the field, build a business model around it, demonstrate the business model, and capture the critical data needed for attracting private capital. So that is where PRIO comes in. And our objective is to demonstrate the productive use of energy business models by providing the companies a runway of about approximately 12 to 18 months, wherein we try to cover the operational expense, sometime technology cost, and buying out unit level losses that are pretty much expected when you launch your first 50 or 100 units. And the program does this by providing high risk grant capital. These are the tools that we use. So we provide high risk grant capital. Our average ticket size is approximately 180,000 euros, and we have a strong technical assistance facility, which can be availed by both PRIO and non-PRIO portfolio companies. And we also help in generating market information and creating market intelligence. And we also provide knowledge dissemination services to portfolio companies. In terms of the way in which PRIO is structured, very briefly, it is funded by the IKEA Foundation and UKFCDO and jointly implemented by the Carbon Trust and Energy for Impact. And these are some of the sectors that Priyo has been working in and Priyo is interested in. As we see it, energy is not an end in itself, but a means to achieving several economic, social, and financial objectives. So these are some of the sectors that we have focused on so far. And e-mobility has played a key role or a crucial role in our portfolio. We have been one of the early investors into e-mobility starting from 2019 and 20. And in terms of outputs and outcomes, the three top outputs that we look forward to are number one, improved income and livelihood scenario for the users of productive use of energy product or a service, reduced carbon emissions, and the ability to attract private capital. So these are the three key outputs that we look forward to at the end of a Priyo intervention. And shown here is a quick map of where the Priyo projects are located. We have funded 26 projects so far in 11 sub-Saharan African countries. And due to the topic that we have today, I'm just highlighting the e-mobility companies here. Zembo, Onji Equatorial, both in Uganda, and then Mobile Power in Sierra Leone, and Rome, previously OP Bus in Kenya. These are some of our portfolio companies. And just as a quick one line as to our intervention with these companies, we or let's say Priyo grant helped Rome in building a product market fit or uncovering a product market fit, trying to identify what the unit economics could potentially be, trying to identify how the motorbike could be made better. And we have played an instrumental role in Rome coming out with its second generation of bikes as we speak at this point. Mobile Power UK, our primary intervention was to support them in the development of battery technology, particularly for e-mobility and generator replacement use case, and also helping them demonstrate a rental model using 17 electric motorcycles in Sierra Leone. And with Zembo, our objective now is to demonstrate the viability, the technical and the financial viability of operating off-grid charging stations. And if we move on very quickly on the topic that has been allocated to me, this is about the various type of capitals that early stage e-mobility companies can tap into or can access. And this looks like this can look like a typical S curve and typical set of investors coming in at various stages. So I would like to clearly highlight maybe 2 or 3 points very specific to e-mobility. I think number one, role of catalytic grant is going to be very crucial for scaling e-mobility. This comes from our experience that even some of the larger peers that we know in Africa are still trying to put their first building blocks in place. This might sound like a surprise, but we see this as a reality. There is still a lot to be done in terms of technology readiness, in terms of identifying high quality battery suppliers, in terms of identifying business models, pricing. So these are some of the early building blocks in terms of business evolution. And we see that even some of the larger companies are still working on them. So catalytic grants, either upfront grant or result-based financing or in other forms, will play a crucial role in scaling e-mobility, not just now and for several years to come. This is our expectation. Number two, look out for strategic investors to the companies, e-mobility companies that are looking to raise capital. Have an eye for strategic investors. We saw this happening with the energy access world. Primarily several European utilities, energy companies, energy component manufacturers deployed various strategies to create impact and profit from the off-grid opportunity in Africa. And we think, something similar is going to happen in e-mobility as well, but in a much stronger way. Just because there is also an opportunity for these potential investors, strategic investors, not financial investors, to also profit from supply of electric parts or supply of OEMs. So these strategic investors could be electric motor or an electric transmission company based out of Japan, for instance, or an asset financing company based in East Africa, or it could be a OEM based out of India. We think there is going to be a lot of interest in terms of investment coming in from most of the strategic investors going forward. And the last point here is target business model dictated capital providers. This might sound easy and intuitive, but that's not what we are seeing. at the moment. For instance, we see companies which primarily require debt capital seeking 20 million, 30 million, 40 million in equity. So we see these kind of mismatches. So you need to identify, have a clear understanding of what your business model is going to be in the first place. Easier said than done, but still this is the reality. So you need to identify your business model in the first place, and you identify what type of financing options that business model is telling you, or that business model wants, or that business model will dictate in the future, and try to identify or reach out to those investors. And that's going to be giving you or the investor a strong perception that you know what's happening, you are connected to the market. Otherwise, it's going to happen the other way. Just in terms of my last slide, the point here is demonstration is key to raising any type of capital. And the demonstration can be small, medium, large. It depends on the risk appetite of the incoming investor. There can be equity investor, which is okay with small demonstration effect. There can be other equity investors which ask for large demonstration effect. But the bottom line is clear. Demonstration effect is key to attracting any type of capital. So I have some points here in terms of prioritizing what to focus on and what could be a natural way of moving ahead in terms of creating demonstration effects. But in the interest of time, maybe I'll stop here, and if I can, revisit this if I have any more time later on. Over to you, Tukam.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I think we will definitely come back to that, Arun, especially this last piece, right? Because it then taps into that whole, I imagine a lot of people wondering, right? Like founders were on, what do I need to demonstrate, right? What does that readiness looks like from it? So that's excellent. So Yvonne, now over to you as somebody who, right, is doing more on the debt side. Arun came a bit more on the grant side, but I imagine that they're probably similar things to look out for. But maybe flow over to you, Yvonne.
Yeah, I have to say that towards the end, Arun was kind of picking points from what I prepared, but I think it kind of just goes in line to show that we are all kind of thinking about e-mobility and access to capital for e-mobility companies in the same way. I will share my screen in a quick minute. Okay, found it. Please let me know once you can see my screen. Quick second. Apologies, it's taking a little time to open this.
If you want more time, maybe we could, Mark, if you're ready, Mark. But if not, Yvonne, again, if it's up now, but if not, Mark could go, and then we'll come back to you.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, go ahead, Mark. I think my computer's just being a little slow.
All right.
I'll have this open.
Mark,
ready
then do you
want
to? Okay, thanks. Mark, do you want to go on then from somebody who's probably seen work with a lot of companies, both in sort of the EV market, but now in e-mobility. So looking forward to sort of your remarks.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Let me take the full screen. So I'm just going to go through what Get Invest does. So Get Invest is an EU-funded program, and our corporate mission is to connect renewable energy companies with renewable energy investment. Get Invest was set up about 6 years ago. And the problem they're addressing is that there's many renewable energy companies in Africa, but we also work in the Caribbean and the Pacific, and there's a lot of investors out there, but connecting them has become an issue. The entrepreneurs don't know where to look, and the investors don't necessarily have the capacity to deal with all of these companies out there. So we, the Finance Catalyst, which is part of Get Invest, but Get Invest has an office in Brussels, and so that their number one task is finance access advisory. But we also work in finance systems advisory, mobilization, information and data. If you go to the website, you can find information on various investors. So there's a number of projects that Get Invest works in, but the Finance Catalyst, which I'm working with, our job is to connect the entrepreneurs with investors. We're funded by the European Union, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Austria. So if you look at, so I want to focus in my short time on finance access advisory. So Get Invest works in information, it works in mobilization. There's a number of conferences we support, including this one, financial systems advisory. But the finance access advisory has two primary programs: Finance Catalyst, which I work with, and Finance Readiness Support. Persistent is one of the groups that's working on that program, and we're honest brokers, which means that entrepreneurs or projects or companies come to the Finance Catalyst and they apply. You can apply online. We'll come back to that. And it's a monthly applications. So we hold monthly application periods. You go online, fill your application. It's quite a simple application. And if a company gets through the process, what they are awarded with, not with money, we're not a provider of finance. We provide 20 man days of advisory service. So the Finance Catalyst has about 35 advisors who are all senior finance people, and they help companies to get ready for investment and to identify investors. So we're very close to the investors, and we know what we want. And so if we pick up the phone to, say, a venture capital firm, they will pick up the phone and talk to us, and we'll say, we really think this company has a good chance. So they'll pick up the phone, probably more likely for us than they would for a company just trying to reach out for investment. So we help the companies get to that stage. So we've had over 1,000 applications for support. Companies, projects supported more than 278. Current clients in our portfolio, 130. Probably 10 of them are e-mobility, but it's very rapidly going to move to 20 e-mobility. And accepted but for finance, that 87 now goes to 100. Just this week, we passed 100 that were accepted by a financier, and financial close 53. I think that's also increased. What does it mean to be accepted by a financier? That means the financier says, we want to work with this company, and they make an offer. So we have with 100 deals, we've got 100 deals on the table, and over half of those have reached financial close. We recently closed our first deal in e-mobility with a client in Rwanda. So coming back, it's a simple application process. I would say there's 35 expert advisors. And we work on the business case, the financial structuring, finding the right finance, and we negotiate with the investors to try and get a good deal. And on the investor side, we build their pipelines and we help them move faster. So that's what we do. you can see on that list the Electrify in the center, and we definitely try to help Electrify, which is an EU group, to find deals. But all of those, Sunfunder, you can see Propaco, you can see RVO, and Vestcita. We help all of those groups find investors to work with. And I'd encourage you to go to the Finance Catalyst website and look at the database. So the finance database is something we use as consultants, but it's open to anyone, so you can go on that website and see the investors out there. What are our themes that we work in? Well, on-grid IPP projects. C&I is for solar is very big right now. Mini grids, solar home systems, small scale products, Pico Solar, cooking, thermal efficiency, storage, appliances. Green hydrogen is now becoming big, and e-mobility. We set up about a year ago. We set up an e-mobility task force, and so we began actively seeking out e-mobility projects. We have at least 8 e-mobility active projects. I've got 3 or 4 that I'm working with. As I mentioned, we recently closed a deal with a Rwandan client and helped them get some finance in. We see e-mobility as a really big driver of renewables and energy efficiency and productive use in Africa. So I'm personally very excited. And as you can see, our biggest geographic areas is sub-Saharan Africa, but we also work in the Caribbean and the Pacific. So if you're interested, you can go to the website and we'll share this sheet. So go to Get Invest EU Finance Catalyst Access, and you can put your application there. Information is confidential, so we don't share it. And so you would be evaluated within 6 weeks, and you would have experts working with you within let's say 8 weeks, 2 months. And so we work on monthly rounds. Please feel free to contact me if you have any information. My email is there. Happy to get back to you. The final thing I would say is we tend to work with companies that already have a runway. So we don't help companies try and find grants, though we do help. It's not, if there's grants available, we bring them to the attention of our clients. But our main role is to try and find companies that are looking for upwards of $250,000. So we're not very, very early stage. We work with companies that kind of already have a runway. Yeah, I hope I haven't taken more than my 5 minutes, but I'll close there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that. I think there's some things that we will come back to. Yvonne, if you've been able to sort of connect, then at least your computer thing, could you go next? Oh, Yvonne, are you still?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear
Okay,
you.
perfect.
You can go on then.
Okay, perfect. Confirming that you can see my screen? No, not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
Huh. I'm having. Okay. Okay. It seems that Microsoft Meet is not letting me share my screen. If it's okay, I'm very happy to talk through the presentation. I know visuals
Yeah,
would be
if you
great,
can
but
talk through.
happy to kind of give some insight. So again, Arun, Mark, thank you so much for your presentation. I think you guys have definitely given us a good background on both your organizations and pretty much setting the stage in our conversation around e-mobility and its adoption on the continent, and pretty much, I think, thinking through ways of how we can move forward and expand the accessibility and also the adoption just across countries on the continent. So to just talk a little bit more on the asset financing side. So as I mentioned earlier, so Untapped is an investment company primarily, and our main mode of investing is through a model that we call smart asset financing. First thing to note is that we, as I mentioned earlier, I'm an investment officer, but I'm also backed by a global team of people, a global team of investors, but then also operators that work between the US, Kenya, and also South Africa. Now, to dive into smart asset financing, what that pretty much means is that we finance revenue generating smart assets for small businesses. And then we secure our repayments with future receivables from the assets that we finance. But then a key part of our model is data. And using data and digital payments as a way to lower risk significantly and simplify the collection method. So you can think about it in like a three-part model. We focus on smart assets. So assets that we know we can pull data from. And then it's a data-driven risk management system that we use to pretty much partner with companies, finance the assets, and also kind of monitor the growth of the companies as we grow our partnership with them. But then also when it comes to like our repayment aspect is a revenue-based financing model. And all of that put together is how we work with companies and how we've partnered with companies across the continent so far. Now, and the way we partner with companies that we scale through local operators. So we see ourselves more as financial partners, and then we work with the local operators that manage and work with these assets to scale and provide services across different countries on the continent. And if you think through our portfolio in terms of the different type of assets that we would finance, of course, e-mobility assets, anywhere from e-cars, e-bikes, even swapping stations as well. Think about your regular ICE bikes and cars. Also think about your payment systems, so POS devices with fintech companies, water ATMs with water companies, solar powered assets as well. And also, we also work through third-party financiers, to provide the initial capital needed to, let's say, to acquire the assets needed for them to be able to provide it to some of their either B2B or B2C clients in terms of financing. So in terms of our just investment process and how we go about partnering with most of the companies, it's more of a three-phase approach, and where we do initial diligence in what we call our pilots. Then we move on to scale up, and then we now move on to our ongoing flexible capital provision partnership. And the phase one in terms of initial diligence is when we connect with entrepreneurs through either our internal community or a network of investors, or even just through cold outreach. So what we do is we pretty much assess if our partnership could work in three main ways. Like I mentioned, do you have a digital asset that we could finance? Are we able to pull data from your asset as a way for us to kind of monitor the growth of your business, but then also the growth of your fleet, in every sense of the word. But then also, would this be a good partnership in terms of some other macro and microeconomic conditions that we consider across different countries that we operate in? And once we go through that process and assess that it's a good partnership and the revenue share aspect is also a positive thing that could work with the company, we move on to what we call a pilot. Understanding that our model is unique in a way and not like a lot of traditional debt capital providers. We run through a pilot with companies that I think one big thing to note is that we work with companies that already have a proven business model. And with that pilot, we provide initial capital of anywhere between 50 to 100K to test out the partnership, finance a number of assets worth that value, and monitor it for the first 3 to 6 months as a way for us to kind of identify and understand if those initial checkpoints that we indicated were needed for us to start the partnership is also is accurate as we kind of hope to grow the partnership with each each of the individual companies we work with. Now, after the 3 to 6 months, we do an analysis, a financial analysis, a data analysis, but then also just a partnership analysis as well. And if everything checks out, we move on to what we call the skills financing approach. And this is more of an immediate and ongoing partnership where we would provide either initial an additional capital in terms of a one-off payment, or sometimes a larger facility that could be drawn down over a period of time based on demand, but then also based on the need. And like I said, our goal is to continue to be a flexible on-demand capital provider for companies that we partner with across the continent. So we use data to make asset financing safe and scalable, while also generating like lasting wealth and providing healthy returns, both to investors, but then also working with companies in order to scale their businesses. So in general, maybe to summarize the model that I just explained, we finance, we track, we collect, we pay, and then we provide additional financing. So as I mentioned, we've indicated that this model works. So far, we've financed about 10,000 assets across 10 countries in Africa, 1 country in Latin America that one of our partners expanded to. And we have an annualized revenue run rate of about 3.6 million. But one main important thing of our model as it relates to e-mobility is that as we've seen our model works with other assets, one of the big things that we've seen is that it's works with e-mobility companies as well. As we know, a good number of them are within the early stage, where they are now trying to prove out their the concepts and the models that they've pretty much started with, being assemblers or being just asset providers for businesses on the B2B or B2C side, or even being battery swapping station operators. We've worked with so far 7 companies across 4 countries in between East and West Africa, but then also South Africa, to test out a good number of their models. Companies like Sembo in Uganda, or Solar Taxi in Ghana, and SEMA in Kenya, but then also other partners like Flex Club, Fika, and Mazi Mobility as well. And what we've seen is that there is an opportunity for these models to scale across the continent. We do understand that, you know, it's just a matter of finding the right fit for your particular company, but then also the particular geography where you are. As we've seen, e-mobility has definitely scaled a lot more in East Africa, but then it's also picking up steam in West Africa. But then there are also different specifications in terms of things like, let's say, batteries, or in terms of the the motorcycles, the e-bikes that some companies operate. But then there's also regulations that, general just operational regulations that are governing the way most of these models are going to scale across the continent. So we see ourselves as key financial players to support the growth by providing the initial capital needed to finance some of these assets. And as I've mentioned, we've dabbled across a lot of different assets, from swapping stations to cars to e-bikes. And our goal is to continue to grow with both the partners that we already have right now, but then also other partners with other assets as adoption takes its course. And looking forward to also providing some more information in how we see e-mobility adoption across the continent, but then also how we see funding, not just debt capital, but then also grants and equity capital play a part in the scalability and the adoption as well.
No, thank you so much for that quite comprehensive view, Yvonne. So I think with that then, right, I think maybe just, right, I think you've heard Yvonne talk about right on taps. I think for those of you listening, founders, right, these are people to probably talk to, right, depending on what your needs are. Yvonne, from sort of a, I think, debt perspective, right, I mean, structured differently than your traditional debt. Arun, probably, you know, on grants. And more, I imagine, and Mark, right, if you're looking for somebody who can help you with your fundraising. Maybe then, like, just going a bit to the heart of, right, this whole investment readiness, right, maybe starting with Mark, right, as somebody who focuses, right, the bulk of your time, right, on helping with these companies try to access capital, right, what would you define investment readiness as, right? Like when you're talking with all of these financiers that on behalf of this company is trying to make this broker his first introductions, what would you define as investment readiness when you're looking at a business? What would you say? Here are 3 or 4 things that make me say, hey, look, I think you're ready for an external investor.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what do investors look for in companies? Well, the first thing is that you need to have got past the pilot stage. I'm a little bit concerned that there's not that much grant money around, and it's difficult to access, that we need to, especially in the transport sector now. But you need to have gotten past the pilot stage and have your business up and running. You need to have got some of the units on the ground. So that's number one. Second, you need to have a strong business model and your financial model together. So what do we mean? Well, the business model, an investor wants to hear the exact attack you're taking to the market. What's the geography? What's your target sales? What is your product? What value chain are you operating in? Investors ask hard questions, and so you need to have your business model together. And we like to see a nice pitch deck. And I mentioned a financial model. A lot of investors, especially investors that are doing deals in equity or and debt, they want to see a strong financial model. So this in a financial model isn't just a simple spreadsheet. It's something to put together by the chief financial officer. So you need to have a financial model. And what does it show? Well, it shows what are your capital needs, where is that money going to go, and how are you going to start getting returns back to fund the company? As you grow the company, what are your growth needs in capital, and how is your income going to grow over that period of time? So a good financial model is something that serious investors are looking at. Finally, from our perspective, we like to see companies that have a runway. What's a runway? Well, you're not. I'll use the word desperate for cash. I mean, everybody in a business is desperate for cash, but you've sorted out your banking. You've got your angel investors who will, if you have a crisis, who will step up and say, yeah, you need some money, I can put that forward. So either it's an investor or a partner. That's why I think it's always good to have an investor or someone who's got, you need someone with ideas, but it's always good to have that big brother who can put in a little bit of money to keep you on the ground, because investors get very frightened when they see companies that are desperate for money and that are unable to keep the doors open. So we like to see companies that have a runway, 3-6 months, and have stability in their operation. So say it again. So you pass the pilot stage. You've sorted out what your business model is, what your target markets are, what your product is, what your service is. You've got your business plan and pitch decks together, and your financial model. If it's basic, it's okay. And then finally, you have a runway, and the company has some stability. If you have those 4 things combined with the enthusiasm and the desire to move, so if you have those 5 things, investors want to work with you, and we at Get Invest are really excited to work with you.
Well, thanks so much, Mark, for that. I think let me now turn to Arun and Yvonne, right? Right, as somebody now, I think Mark has, again, he's saying like this is what startups need, right? They need to have some traction on the ground. They need a strong business model, at least clear business model, right? Reasonable financials, right? A nice presentation and a good team. From your perspective, are folks who are often on the end receiving this, right, desires, expressions of interest to get funding, right? What would you add, right? Or, when you look at, when you approach either by Mark on behalf of a business or directly by one of these businesses, right? What in your view constitutes readiness? What are 2 or 3 things that are like, this is important to me? I understand, of course, there are probably differences, right? Because, and Arun, coming at it from a Prio angle, part of what you're doing is the risking, right? Whereas Yvonne is probably looking at something that might be a bit more established, relatively speaking. So what are 2 or 3 more things, right, that you look at when folks come to you for funding that makes you think this is something worth putting more time in, something I want to sort of like try to make a bet on?
Okay, Tukam, just to answer your question from a Prio perspective, we have our own priorities and we would like to see certain outputs and outcomes, come at the end of the project. And I briefly highlighted some of them before. When it comes to grants, and by the way, our next call for proposal is likely to be in early 2023, and we are big on e-mobility. Maybe I'm saying this twice or thrice. In terms of the factors that we look forward to, number one, technology readiness. Prio, as I said, is in the business of proving business models. As simple as that. So we are unlikely to take a technology risk. We are happy to take all of the business model risk or the business model demonstration risk. So we would like to see technology to be in place. And when I say technology, it can be an off-the-shelf technology. It can be about having the right type of supply agreement, supplier relationships, and to overlap on what Mark previously said, some units on the ground would definitely be helpful, but that's not a mandatory or eligibility criteria. But technology readiness is definitely an eligibility criteria that we look forward to. And in terms of scoring or prioritizing the kind of companies that we want to work with, again, we have several factors, but to pick the top 2 or 3 factors, the level of productive use of energy innovation is something that we look forward to. Within e-mobility, the productive use of energy is very obvious and imminent, and the innovation aspect is also very obvious and imminent. So productive use of energy innovation is something that we look forward to, and we look forward to the alignment between what Prio wants to do and what the company wants to do. For instance, if e-mobility is one of your 10 business activities, or if e-mobility is a peripheral activity to your core business, or let's say you are an agro processing company, you want to buy 3 electric tuk-tuks into transporting your produce or transporting your agro inputs, that's not something that we will be interested in. We want to fund companies where the core business focus is e-mobility. And that is an alignment that we look forward to. And the third aspect that we look forward to is the ability to scale and attract private capital. So in a counterintuitive manner, Prio wants to work with companies that would not need us anymore at the end of 12 months or 8 months. That's the yardstick that we try to have, and we are happy to cover the operational expense, provide them the runway, take high risk in terms of the early stage nature of the enterprise. But what we would also like to see, analyze, and of course, we have industry experts and consultants and investors on our investment committee. We want to see that this particular company coming in has the capacity to scale up and attract private capital at the end of, let's say, an 18-month time period. So those are 3 aspects that we look forward to from a Prio perspective.
No, thank you so much for that. And I think Yvonne now, I think just, adding to that, right? Like your perspective as somebody who, right, is looking at it, imagine from a slightly different lens, given the nature of the instrument that you try to deploy.
Yeah, one thing I will start with is that while we're looking at it from a different lens as debt providers or more asset financiers, I think a lot of what Arun has said pretty much also ties to some of the things we look at, I guess, with slight shifts. I'll start by saying that one thing is that we are value chain agnostic when it comes to e-mobility companies or e-mobility solutions that are out there. But one of the main things that we would require is that a physical asset has to be involved. So because we're asset financiers, everything we do at the moment is tied to the physical asset that we would be financing. The capital has to be linked to either an e-bike or car, or in some cases, a swapping station. Just to name a few of the solutions that we know are out there. So I think that's one of the key things just to highlight. It has to have an asset, and because that's what we would be financing. The next thing for us is that it has to be revenue generating. So we do not finance ideas or even preliminary pilots. When we say we run pilots, we look at it as, okay, you've tested it out, you found that this works, this is your proven concept. And if you need additional assets to grow your fleet and to scale, to start generating a lot more revenue. So we need to see that there's revenue that has been generated from the model or from the assets that you are using for your business. The next thing is, I think in line with revenue generating is your strong unit economics. So everywhere from the cost of the asset to the revenues generated to also even like the need for the financing term. So I think there are a lot of different unit economics across the different type of e-mobility companies and e-mobility solutions. And strong is relative for each of them. But I think when we analyze it, we want to see that they are strong enough to sustain your business as it grows, as we're stepping in to support with asset financing. I think another key thing for us, as I mentioned, we have a data-driven model, is that there's the ability to be able to pull data from the assets. And think about data, everything from operational data to really understand, okay, this asset, how is it operating? Are we able to pull things like number of stops? So are we able to understand the range that your battery can take you from point A to point B based on the type of business that you're running? Is it transportation? Is it logistics? The batteries? Does the battery support the range that you're going to need on a day-to-day basis? So data and information like that. And then I think one last key thing, similar to what Arun said, is the ability to scale, because our goal is to continue to be partners. I think a slight shift is, well, Arun mentioned that they don't want to be partners with you after 12 months. We want to grow with you. So we want to be able to continue to help support you to scale your business, understanding that you're going to need other financiers, right? But our goal is to help you pretty much scale and help you grow and continue that partnership as long as we can. So those are kind of some of the key things that we look at from the asset financing perspective when we're considering working with businesses.
Well, thanks for that. I think you made Arun there laugh because he said you want to grow with the business or assets. With the one, I think it's just complementary, right? It's just different stages of, Arun gets you to where you no longer need Prio, and then I imagine that.
Then we take it up from there.
Okay, so then I think just in the interest of time, maybe we can take a few questions from the audience, right? Warren, I don't know if you're on how to do that. Can you hear me? Maybe we take some questions from the audience. So we're going to take probably, let's say 3 questions, and then we can close after that with some closing remarks from the panelists. So Warren, I'll let you then maybe just at least handle that piece. If the questions, I imagine there are quite a few questions from the audience given the large attendance.
Yeah, so I'll just pick one of them. And the first one is, how do investors balance the attractiveness of the market startups they operate in versus the strength of the founding teams? So how do investors balance the attractiveness of the markets the startups operate in vis-a-vis the strength of the founding teams?
Yvonne, maybe you want to take that first, and then Arun, and then Mark.
Yeah. So I think all that is pretty much complementary, right? First of all, the strength of the market kind of like if you're operating in a market that you see as strong for the particular model that you're hoping to implement, because one of the things I always say is as you're developing your business and as you're developing the model you're working with, consider the geography, right? So some markets may be very, I guess some markets may be more in tune to, let's say, logistics versus, let's say, transportation. And you now have to kind of consider, is that like my model, I'm a transportation company, am I going to go to a place where they banned, transportation with, let's say, e-bikes or something? So I think when you consider the market, I mean, I know we can look at it from market size or the ability to operate in a particular market with a particular model, but then also the strength of the business and the founding team. I think all that will be seen as complementary when you start doing the analysis. By the time you look at the team or you talk to the team, you understand is this the right team to actually execute this particular business model that they're talking about, either from their past experience or either from the research that they've done, or even either from some of the work that they've already done in the current business. I think there's kind of like there's an even way to really consider it, from understanding the team's motivation, understanding the model that they're running and the market that they've identified to actually run the model. Have they done the research well enough? The unit economics that they've seen from, let's say, testing out the model, is it strong enough to actually sustain the business in the near term or in the long term based on how that market is operating? And then their vision for the business in itself. Maybe they're starting with one particular model and looking to expand on it. Does that, and for lack of a better phrase, make sense for everything that you've already learned from the conversations you've had? So honestly, I think it's a combination of the gut check. It's also the numbers, aligning, and then also just from your own understanding of the operations and all the different markets that they're trying to operate in. Does it work? So it's complementary, there's a gut check, but then also the numbers usually never lie.
Arun, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm largely going to echo what Ivan just mentioned, and the easy answer is both are really important. The management team and the strength of the market or the market opportunity, both are clearly important. What I may incline towards is it depends on your life cycle, considering that maybe 80-90% of the e-mobility companies today in sub-Saharan Africa are maybe 2 years old, not more than 2 years old. It's largely going to be about the management team and the clarity that they have, the kind of thought process that they have, and the market positioning that they want to achieve for the company. So that might take precedence during the initial phase. And what we have clearly seen is as the companies progress, they try to build in processes, systems, and they try to create tier 2, tier 3 kind of management, which tries to get the company onto some kind of, not exactly an autopilot, but a near autopilot kind of model over a period of time, not immediately, but over a period of time. So if you were to ask me, the management team and the strength of the management team takes precedence definitely over the early years to, let's say, a mid or a early or a mid-stage scale up, after which it's more about the market opportunity, not just because the management team is not important anymore, but by that time they would have built the systems and the processes and the people that will take the company forward.
So thank you for that. Mark, we'll come back to you on the next question, just in the interest of time, because we have about 2 minutes. Warren, do you want to maybe put in one last question from the audience?
Tukam, I'm not seeing any other questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then I guess maybe, right, in the interest of time, Mark, closing remarks, right? We'll start with you, and then Arun, and then Yvonne, you will be tasked with the grand, right, wrapping it all so that everybody goes home inspired.
Yeah, I think my word of encouragement is that e-mobility opportunities are growing very rapidly. And I think that my word to people out there that want to get into it, well, if you have your own company, then jump in. I personally, I don't think you need to scale that fast. You need to find a niche that's viable. We're not all going to be M-Copas. We're not all going to be Safaricoms. But if you find a niche that can that is viable and you can grow into, then you will succeed. So yeah, jump in. Don't give up. most of us entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs, so keep at it. Failure is a success is the result of many attempts and failures before. So keep at it.
Thank you, Mark. Arun? You're on mute, Arun.
Yeah, Tukam, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Very briefly, in terms of my closing remarks, I'm going to selfishly market myself for the last 1 or 2 minutes. So Prio, as I said, has been working with some of the e-mobility companies. Already the names that you previously saw, OPBus, now Roam, Zembo, Mobile Power. We are in the process of working or onboarding 2 other companies, electric tuk-tuk company based out of Tanzania, and another interesting electric two-wheeler company based out of Kenya. We are in the process of onboarding them. And the next call for proposal is due Q1 of 2023. We also have plans to focus on e-mobility, and we are working towards that at this point. And for the companies that are out here, we also have a technical assistance facility, and you don't have to wait until our call for proposal is out. And through this technical assistance facility, we have supported e-mobility companies develop their financial models, economic models, emission models, go-to-market strategy, technical design of solar charging stations. These are all activities that we have been supporting e-mobility companies with already. I'm sure you all or many of you have a similar need, so feel to reach out to Prio and directly to me. And I'm trying to text my email ID, but for some reason I could not. So you could perhaps reach out to Varun or the organizer to get my email ID and directly reach out to us. Yeah, we have a lot in store to offer, and we look forward to working with most of your companies here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arun. Yvonne?
Okay, I think just most likely a combination of Warren and Arun's final comments. But to start with, I think the main thing to understand is that we're still very early days when it comes to e-mobility solutions, but then also e-mobility adoption on the continent. And there's a lot of opportunity for a lot more players to step into the role of providing solutions either in the asset space, but then also in the software space as well. So I think it's going to take time for us to reach, let's say, maybe a Tesla space. In a way, we're probably already there with some of the solutions we're seeing, but the growth in the ecosystem is going to take time, but we are well equipped with some of the companies that we've seen, but then also the financiers that we're seeing getting into the space to support the growth. So I think I'm personally excited, and we've all kind of echoed the excitement that we have about the growth of this sector, and also looking forward to seeing more solutions, more entrepreneurs, but then also more money coming into the space to increase the adoption, but then also to pretty much make it a lot more cost effective for people on the ground to own some of these assets, both for business growth, but then also for personal use as well. At on top, like I mentioned earlier, we provide asset financing for businesses within the e-mobility space. And that's across the different assets that we've seen in play, but then also opportunistically open to other newer assets or asset classes within the space as well. So if you want to learn more, or if you're in a position where you do need asset financing, using the data-driven approach and a revenue share financing model, like I explained, please feel free to reach out. Let's have a chat, and looking forward to potentially working with a lot more of you. But yeah.
No, thanks so much, Yvonne. Thank you everyone for attending. I think, as they've said, right, reach out. You could probably get information from Warren. So if you, I think, you can reach out to Warren and get our contacts. I think Mark and Aaron shared theirs, but feel free to reach out to Warren to get the other ones if you think we can be helpful in that journey you've embarked on or about to embark on. I'll then pass it now to you, Warren. Thank you, everyone, so much for attending.
Thanks, Tukam, for the incredible work during the moderation. Thanks, Mark, Arun, and Yvonne for your presence as well. And thank you to the audience. We've had a huge turnout this morning, and I just want to remind you all that there'll be another session in the next 2 hours. This one will be on unlocking the market for electric four-wheelers in Africa. So just
Thank you all.
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you all and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Warren. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.